Hello friends, welcome to layering, removing, and adding color for richness and depth in oil pastel. My name is Diane. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get started. So before we get going with the drawing, let's just talk about the materials you'll need. You will need a piece of paper suitable for oil pastel, a printout of the reference photo we're going to be copying, reference painting, or you can choose to copy off a screen if you just want to search it and then have it on an iPad or something. This painting, you'll see this information on the bottom of your screen as well, so you can pause the video and find it. The name of this painting is Girl of the Tatra. It's by Marianne Stokes, done in 1905 to 1907. Oil on board. So go ahead and pause the video, get yourself that reference image to copy. If you do print it out, I recommend printing it on photo paper so you can get the brightness of those colors to really pop. But copy paper works also. Or as I said, you can work off a screen. So this is going to be a pretty quick class because all we're doing is we're going to copy a section of the flowers. We're not even concerned about the main figure for the purpose of learning how to layer and remove color and add richness and depth to an area in oil pastel. So first thing we want to do is layer white because that's the color of the flowers and we have to preserve that. If we didn't layer white, it would be very hard to get whites to pop out after we put the greens and browns and yellows. So first grab a white and just color, if it's not a brand new set, color on a scratch paper or side of your paper to make sure it's clean. And just color an area in the middle of your paper. I'm not pressing very hard. I'll show you with a color so you can see how hard I'm pressing. I'm pressing about that hard. So you can see lots of paper showing through. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention you're gonna need your oil pastel kit and we don't need a pencil for this class. I guess you probably deduced that, but just in case, I forgot to finish my materials section. Anyway, you're coloring so that you can see lots of white showing through. You're not pressing hard like this so that you're covering up all the white paper. Back to the white, so just color a big area. Doesn't have to, well, it doesn't have to be huge, but I'm doing about, I don't know, 2 square inches, something like that. And then we will put, we'll do a little bit of this brownish area in the back and the green just for some variety. So for the brownish area, you can use a little bit of like a light yellowy orange color and just color kind of vertically to place hold for that. And that, because we're using such a nice bright yellow, it'll create that warmth in the background, even though it's way too bright for that, but we are going to dull it down considerably. And then for the grasses, we'll start with just the lightest green, and it's a springy, kind of cool greens for the most part. There's some yellows in there, but they're more bluish. So I have this very light bluish green that I'm going to use, and I'm just going to color around some areas that I want to preserve flower shapes in. Nothing specific, but I'll show you a trick. One thing to avoid is even spacing. If you evenly space it, it's going to just look like a bunch of white polka dots on green. So make some clustered together to very different sizes. Further in the background, they should be a little smaller for the most part. You can have some large ones in the background, but the closer they get to you, the bigger they get because they're closer. So things appear larger when they're closer. So just put a bunch of little green dots, and you can do as many as you want. You could just do 2 if you feel like it. The whole point is just to get the experience of layering and removing color. So once you've done that, then you can kind of color between them in vertical strokes because the grass is growing vertically, but don't feel you have to go, in fact, don't go extremely vertically. Kind of go, be playful, a little diagonal, a little sideways, somewhat this and that, but mostly in a vertical direction. And if you're being playful with it, that will create the organic nature of the grass, because grass does not grow perfectly straight or appear perfectly straight, but mostly grows up, right? So there we go. That's our first layer, or second. I guess the first layer was white. Now we're going to go in and add some interest. So I'm going to use the bright yellow and just put a little dot into some of these flowers, but not every one, because some of the petals are folded over the center, so you wouldn't naturally see them. So I just picked a few and put a center in there. And the reason I did that so early in the picture was just to really preserve those flowers. It's going to help to keep them as a placeholder. I'm going to use kind of a reddish brown at this point, even though it's much darker and really bright, but it's going to create some darks as well as some depth. So I'm putting a lot of it in the brown because that's really the dominant color. Mostly planting my oil pastel and flicking up because that creates the illusion of grasses. But you can also do a little bit of coloring if it feels arduous or like it's getting old, something like that. And I'm going right into the green because there is a presence, just a sort of breath of brownish red in the green. So I'm not coloring solidly at all. I'm just kind of randomly putting some brownish red in there. And oops, I colored over one of my white flowers. No big deal. Something like that, just really random, a few little whispers of it. Now we're going to go back with a darker green and clean it and press a little bit harder. So this is going to create more of a presence of solid grass. And I'm going to put a lot of this one in, trying to go around the white flowers. But if you accidentally color over one, just oh well, and keep going. And you can see I'm leaving lots of space. I'm coloring most of the grass with this color because it is what I've chosen to be the dominant color, but I am leaving lots of that lighter green kind of showing through. And then I'm going to go for an olivey green, and that's going to add some darkness, some shadow. And this one I'm putting more in patches because the shadow seems to exist more in patches than single strands. Actually, I guess that's true of all these greens now that I say that. So I'm going to go into the reddish brown with the green so that those areas, they do kind of blend together a little seamlessly. I mean, there is a brown area and a green area, but you can see they marry in the middle there, they integrate. So I'm just dabbing some of the dark green. And then now that I've got my main greens in, I'm going to use kind of a, let's see, I think it was this one. Yeah, like a light minty green, bluish green, but not very dominant, and use it as kind of a blending tool. So I'm going to go in and press mildly hard. I'm not pressing very hard because now I have lots of layers of oil pastel on there, which means it's going to be thick and oily. So if I press hard, it's almost going to peel the color off. And that's not what I want to do here. I just want to blend the color a little bit so that the greens and browns kind of come together. I'm also cutting in on the flower shapes a little more precisely. If they look wonky or not flower-like, I'm just sort of giving them more of an edge. And as it turns out, the flowers I accidentally colored over were kind of my spacers. So now I do have sort of even spacing with my flowers, which is what I didn't want. So now I can scrape. I'm going to use my fingernail and just scrape off some areas. And you can see it comes off fairly well. It's never going to come off completely, but I am trying to add some smaller flowers in clusters so that the whole thing appears less patterned. I want it to be more organic. And then I can go back with the white and just give those scraped areas a little bit of color. It's almost not necessary because that came off so beautifully. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it doesn't come off well and you have to go over it with white. If you don't want to use your fingernail, you can also use a coin or a plastic knife or a palette knife if you have one for painting. Just anything with a sharp, hard edge, a credit card, to scrape off the oil pastel and then keep layering and going. So I'm going to go back to the brown and add a little bit more of this yellow, mainly as a blending tool to blend those browns in. And now I'm coloring in circles because I have so many vertical lines that I kind of want to break that up a little bit. There we go. Makes it look a little grassier. And I'm going to put some gray over it too because it's just too bright. So I'm pressing lightly with the gray and doing circles because I just want to blend it. I don't want to dominate it and I don't want to pull the color off. So I just use that to kind of dull down the background. And it looks like we're done. I mean, the whole point was layering and removing color to create richness and depth, but you can push it further if you feel like it. You can add more blue. You know what? Oh, I just saw something. I'm going to add some blue-green because there's some of that in there. That'll be lovely. It'll just add another color, another dimension of color. But the main point of this class was that whole scraping thing. Even though I accidentally arrived there, I wasn't planning on having to do it because I had accidentally covered up my flowers. I was planning to pull some color off at the very end so that you could see how to add more flowers. So that kind of worked out really organically too. Anyway, hopefully you got something out of that and enjoyed it, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.